Do you ever have that one game you always want to recommend, but you always find yourself giving caveats before you do so? That's this video. 10 games I'd recommend, or top 10 games I'd recommend, but with a caveat. This list is full of different genres, or reasons, or things as to why I want you to enjoy that thing. I've enjoyed that thing. I've had a lot of fun with that thing, and you might also have a lot of fun with that thing, but there are caveats attached to them. These are the 10 games I recommend, 10 games and or categories I recommend, but with caveats attached. I'm going to start off with number 10. Number 10 over here, and I'm going to figure out how to fit these all on my table and camera here because I don't know what will happen. But starting off with number 10 over here, and again, they all have a specific reason, and those reasons sometimes apply to other games as well, and so we'll talk about that as much as we can. But over here, we have Wonderlands War. Wonderlands War is fantastic. This is a great game. It's area control with a degree of Quacks of Quedlinburg style bag building. It's push your luck, it's area control, it's powers and abilities, asymmetric factions, a ton of good things. The Deluxified Edition over here. This is a delightfully good time. Let me see if I can show you over here. It's a delightfully good time as far as the, let me zoom out a drop, as far as the experience you'll have with this game. But it's going to be like, you're going to have your board over here, the regions you're fighting over, the cards you're drafting every single round, as you work towards bag building, 3 rounds of play, beautiful art, excellent gameplay, and it outstays its welcome. That's my main problem with Wonderlands War, which is why if I ever recommend this one, I'll be telling you, hey, it's amazing, it's incredible, I highly recommend it, but it's also a little longer, or a lot longer, than it should be. This game runs long, unless you are playing it as a 3-player game with 3 people who know exactly what they're doing, or maybe 4 players who know exactly what they're doing, and they're fast players. This game tends to run longer than the experience it gives me. So it's great, it really is. It just runs longer than ideally I'd like to recommend. And again, this is a category thing. Some of these games I'll mention, others, others I'm just going to talk about the ones. But some games are great games, but they sometimes outstay their welcome. My number 9 over here, and I should say this list isn't in a huge order, although my number 1 is a very particular one. It's the one that I have possibly amongst the most recommendation for, but also with amongst the most caveats to it. But for my number 9 though, my number 9... Foundations of Rome, which is a great game, but cost versus the experience you're getting out of it. Foundations of Rome is expensive. This is a big box game, and the cost proportionate to the type of game it is specifically where my complaint lies. I think there are expensive games. I think there are games that will cost more than they should, cost more than the experience they give you, and I think there are games that will deliver every ounce of experience for it. Foundations of Rome is a glorified polyomino game, to the point that they are coming out with a retail version of this game that's going to be like a $40, $50 game, if that. That's basically just polyomino placement, and this over here is a $200 behemoth over here that will give you a ton of gameplay, but is ultimately a polyomino game with a few modules where you place polyominoes in these giant megalithic Roman structures onto a shared board with a table presence that is nearly unmatched, but ultimately it's polyomino placement with strategy. This is a good game here. There's good strategy, there's good removal, placement, readjusting. I think it's a fantastic experience that I highly, highly recommend, but you have to kind of be willing to look past that price tag. You have to be willing to say, you know what? Sometimes I'm just going to spend $200 on a polyomino game because sometimes that's the experience I'm going to get out of said polyomino game. I'm realizing halfway through this video, we're going to have to do dropping some games to the floor over here because there's no way I space my table for everything I want to talk about today. My number 8 is going to be the only real small box game over here, but that's going to be The Mind. The Mind from Pandasaurus Games is a delightful game, except it also isn't. I think this is a ton of fun. I think you'll have a lot of fun playing through The Mind, probably, but my main caveat to this one is always that it's not really a game so much as it is an experience. It's an experience you play through, you go through it, you do the thing, you kind of go through with other players, solving the sort of puzzle that is a combination of counting cards in your heads and just being on the same wavelength. Ultimately in The Mind, what you're doing is you're going to be playing cards every single round. The goal is to play your cards in order of ascending sequence. So if I have a 3, I have to play it before your 17. The cards go from 0 to 100, or from 1 to 100. The problem is, you can't tell me anything, I can't tell you anything. The only way we can communicate is by playing or not playing our card. So I hold my card and I wait, and the fact that you're not playing your card tells me everything I need to know. Except that eventually, if you have 72 and I have 89, who plays their card first? You figure it out. Ultimately, you figure it out. And then the game escalates every round by giving you more and more cards, which sounds like it might be harder, but to some extent it's also easier. It gives you more points at which you could mess up, but it gives you more information about the possible statistically relevant breadth between the cards. And ultimately, the entire game is people not talking, looking at each other, almost daring each other to play some cards. Eventually, they do so, and you either win or you lose in this game that's not a game. I think the mine's fantastic. I keep this around for years now. Every time I beat it, I just stop playing it for 6 months, and then I go back to playing it again because I'm in the mood of just being on the same wavelength as somebody. There is a game called Wavelength. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the Mind over here. The Mind is fantastic, but it barely counts as a game. Coming at number 7. 7 is almost more of a category than a game, although I do have a specific game on the table because it was subject to that very much for me. Number 7, I told you there's too many games here. There's too many big box games. Is Frosthaven and or Gloomhaven and or any big box campaign game that asks you to give it hundreds of hours of play before you go through it. Frosthaven is excellent. Gloomhaven is excellent. Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion is excellent-er and probably the one I'd recommend the most. I'd recommend Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. It gives some of the experience aspects are lost out on it, but I think one of the things it does well is Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion will likely whet your appetite as opposed to potentially burning you out on it. Now, every player is different. Keep that in mind. Everyone is created differently. There'll be people who will go through Gloomhaven an entire time and be like, boom, I'm here for more. Let me go through it again and again and again. For me, Gloomhaven was a great game 80 hours into it, and it was a game that I was kind of okay with 150 hours into it, and it was a game that got progressively less and less interested in it the more I went into the system. Between Gloomhaven, between Jaws of the Lion, between Frosthaven, I have played maybe 300 hours combined in these worlds, and it's just too much for me. I've had a similar experience happen to me with Tenaris Adventures, where I think Tenaris Adventures is a 5 out of 5 experience, a great game. I highly recommend it. I also liked it most when I was playing it, 10, 15 hours a year, as opposed to when I started diving into it fully and giving it a full campaign playthrough and giving it 150 hours, it has gone down for me. I think some games hold up to that kind of repeated play. There are games in my collection that I have played for hundreds and hundreds of hours and are still there, but almost by definition, they are games that didn't ask me to play it for that much time. They gave me the opportunity to play it when and where I wanted to. I think personally that, to me at least, campaign games work best when they ask you to give a limited amount of your time to it and not when they ask you for hundreds of hours of your time. You can choose how to engage with those systems, but when the game wants you to engage with it more than you might want to, that's where burnout can occur. And so for me, make no mistake, the fact that I've given this game system 300 hours of my life is a testament to how good the game system is. But also maybe there are campaign games worth checking out that don't ask you to give it 300 hours. Maybe there are other options, and so Frosthaven, Gloomhaven, Tenaris Adventures, any system that asks you for over 150 or 200 hours of your time, inherently to me the caveat is you might like it, but also they might just burn you out on the system before you're done with it yourself. That's going to be Frosthaven over here. Coming in at number 5, I think we're number 5 over here. At number 5, before one more big box before we start relocating things, is going to be Marvel Champions. Marvel Champions over here, and the caveat here is just the sheer never-ending amount of content around this system. Marvel Champions is my poison of choice here, but this is any system. It could be Magic the Gathering, it could be Warhammer, it could be Arkham Horror the card game. Any system that continuously comes out with content at a faster rate. Is this loose or is this just, Yeah, I'm not sure. Any system that comes out with more content than you can keep up with, you need to be mindful around whether that system fits your lifestyle and whether you're going to feel the bug to continuously get more and more content. Marvel Champions over here is an excellent game. It's going to be a cooperative and or solo deck building game with a limited collectible system, meaning effectively card packs come out every month, but you don't have to hunt through boosters. You can just buy a pack and you have everything. So it's collectible, but limitedly so. But the game's going to give you a solo cooperative building of you're building out your hero decks. You're going to use a hero attribute. You're going to use a bunch of other cards, build out your deck, tackle the various enemy. It gives you difficulty modification, it gives you campaign, it gives you a ton of gameplay, and it gives it to you with good solid gameplay, plus an IP that you probably like if you're already playing this. But it comes out with packs once a month. And I don't know about you, I love this game, but I play it maybe once every 2 or 3 months, which means I'm playing it less frequently than the packs are coming out, which for me is a bit of a problem. I finally stopped buying more Marvel Champions. I finally said, you know what? I don't need more. I have plenty. I have so much. I will regret that decision 20 years from now when they stop printing it and all the stuff is incredibly overpriced and expensive. But for right now, I feel like it's a reasonable choice and one that I'm fine standing behind for right now. So yeah, that's my number 5, Marvel Champions. My number 4 is going to be number 6, Marvel Champions. My number 6 is Marvel Champions. My number 5, on the other hand, my number 5 is going to be Marvel United. So 2 Marvels back to back. Marvel United is a delightful game, and every time I recommend this, I will tell you how much I play it, I'll tell you how much fun the game is, and I'll also tell you it might be way too light for you. There are a few games in my library that fit this category. I think I may have done a video once of top 10 guilty pleasure games. Almost everything in there fits this category, whether it's Valeria Card Kingdoms, whether it's Marvel United, or whether it's any of the other games that I can't remember offhand but do probably fit into that category. But Marvel United is a lot of fun. It's basically a chibi style game where you're going to be playing cooperatively and or solo. As you have your heroes, you have the decks of cards, you chain your cards into each other. So as I play a card, I get to do actions, but when you play a card, you get my actions too. And so every time you play a card, you're getting your actions plus the prior person's actions, which incentivizes a ton of teamwork and an overall great time as you work together to take down the various enemies. The enemies are more nuanced, the heroes are a little bit more samey, and so ultimately Marvel United, though, for me, it gives me a lot of fun. The scenarios they give you when you have expansions for the game, a lot of fun. Scenarios give you more and more ways to interact with the game and give you interesting different challenges, including little mini campaign progressions to go through. I've had an absolute ton of fun with Marvel United, and I highly recommend it. With the caveat that A, it's a very light game, and B, if you want all of it, you might be spending $700, $800 to get all of this pretty light game. There are 3 full Kickstarter seasons full of content. There's going to be Marvel United, Marvel United X-Men, and Marvel United Multiverse, all of them giving you a ton of ways to spend extra money on a system that is way too light to be deserving of that much. And so there's both a content addiction, similar to Marvel Champions, although less on a set release schedule, although somewhat set nonetheless, but then also just the sheer lightness of the game, that it is a lighter experience and it may not be as good for you as it is for me. My number 4 is going to be Too Many Bones. Arguably the best game on this list. I'm pretty sure it is my highest rated game on this list, but Too Many Bones is an experience that you have to be willing to sign up for. Now, this is true of both my number 1 pick on this list, but also other chip theory games. I debated loading up Cloudspire and Burn Cycle and throwing them on this list as well. I think Hoplomachus is more accessible. It's probably the most accessible big box experience, but Too Many Bones is one of my favorite games of all time. And it involves breaking your teeth to get into this game, and if you don't play it semi-regularly, you're still going to have to break your teeth again and again every time you try to relearn what the system is doing, where it's up to, and how it's delivering for you. I think Too Many Bones gives you some of the most intricate gameplay you'll get in a game, some of the best leveling up you will see in any single game. It arguably has the most intricate characters you can possibly play as, every single one offering their own puzzle to master in this sort of RPG style adventure, but with leveling and dice rolling and a tactical skirmish combat and all these things. It is an incredible journey. It does not outstay its welcome. It gives you single sessions to go through, so you can play through, a 2-hour session, you can play through a 4-hour session, but it breaks it down into small bite-sized chunks, or bite-sized relative to huge campaign games, not so bite-sized compared to your average regular tabletop game, but it does all that, but it does so with a rulebook that is the rulebook I should get caveats on. I find the rulebook in Too Many Bones to be not the best. I think they have continuously improved over the years. I know when I played it, it definitely was a lot to get through, but then also the sheer complexity of the system. Learning a new character is not a, hey, let me go ahead and read this. Learning a new character is a, let me grab the sheet, sit down for half an hour, look at the components, and then understand how this character plays. That's what it's like to learn a new character within the system. So there's rules overhead, not the best rulebook, and also a lot of content. Content overload is also going to be a thing on this one, but Too Many Bones, absolutely fantastic, but you really have to be willing to give it a lot of time, effort, and energy for you to get what you want out of this game. My number 3 is going to be another big box over here. Number 3 is going to be Quodd Heroes. Some of those pulls are, this is a big box, this is a hefty box. Those pulls are interesting. Quodd Heroes over here is absolutely amazing. I love this game, and I should note that the caveat I'm going to give to Quodd Heroes might get better with the second edition. There is a second edition on its way, and I think it will improve some of my complaints, while I don't think eliminating them. I think improving it. I've played the second edition, but I won't know for sure until I've dived into a final copy of it. But Quodd Heroes is one of the quirkiest, most zany, most fun games that gives you just programming. It's programming. All it is you're trying to program your little quads, which are these dice that topple from side to side, but the way they topple indicates which side and which boost they're going to activate, and so you're planning out a sequence of toppling and the subsequent abilities that those will trigger, all while dealing with various items and upgrades and other things that are going on, all while dealing with the unique scenario, whether it's a fetch scenario or capture the flag, a race, whether you're playing cooperatively, competitively, solo. There's a whole bunch of ways to play this game, and they all revolve around these unique quads with their own abilities and just tons and tons of different things as far as extra abilities and items and opportunities being thrown your way as you topple across a map, pass up a portal, spring from one location to another, jump around different things, gather crystals. It is absolute zaniness at its best. The rules for the first edition which is what I have over here, were not necessarily the best. And the fiddliness of the game system is... It's a fiddly game. It's a fiddly game. You have to be willing to put up, again, at least the first edition, you have to be willing to put up with a certain amount of fiddliness to be able to get to where you're trying to go in this game. I debated putting the Great Wall from Awakened Realms in this number 3 slot, because again, same complaints, like good games that are a little fiddly. Great Wall has the same similar problem where it's amazing, it's an incredible game, it's a great experience, it gives you a ton of things to consider, but it's a drop fiddly in some areas that takes a little bit away from how much I enjoy the experience. For Quodd Heroes, there's very few games out there like this. There's Mechs vs. Minions that gives you a chance to experience some similarities. Mechs vs. Minions is a fantastic game, by the way, a little bit more accessible. I think this does more than Mechs vs. Minions. I think it is better than Mechs vs. Minions if you can get past the fact that it can be a bit to fully grok everything going on in this game, to fully understand all the things happening, and to be on top of the rules you need to know to follow the system. Again, second edition, I believe, is improving upon that. I don't think it takes away the complaints. I believe it improves upon them. That's going to be Quodd Heroes, my number 3. My number 2 is going to be Wild Assent. And this is a different category entirely as far as my caveats in this one. See, Wild Assent falls into a specific category that I think I could apply to games like Aquatica or Carson City in my collection, other games that have the same problem as Wild Assent, which is games you like and you think they're excellent and you want to recommend them, but you know that you like it above the norm. This game is like a 7.2 or 7.0. It might be down to 7.0 on Board Game Geek. It is liked by many and not liked by many others. I think it's fantastic. It's a 5 out of 5 game. I've had so much fun with it. I'm excited to dive back into it. I'm waiting for Levon Rising so I can play more. And the Levon Rising, the way it tweaked the scenarios and the way you go through them, everything about this game to me works well. Except for the rulebook. The rulebook was a bit of a mess, but that's a different problem, although it's part of the problem. But to me, the main thing is ultimately, at the end of the day, rulebook or not, I think that I like Wild Assent more than the average person does, and so I recommend it with that caveat. You should know that I love this game, and you should also know that the average opinion for it is lower. This is a similar problem I have with Carson City, it's a similar problem I have with Aquatica, it's a similar problem I have with other games that I'm not remembering offhand. There are a bunch of games. Most of the time, I would say, when I love a game, other people love it too. But there are times when I am in a minority. Not alone, mind you. Aquatica in particular, I just found out Tim Chun loves also very much in his top 5 games of all time. Tim Chun's a fantastic channel. You should check him out. But yeah, I think Wild Assent's great. I will advocate for this from today to tomorrow. I'm just going to tell you at the same time so that you know that you're walking into a game purchase that others didn't necessarily feel as strongly as I did. And that's going to be my number 2, Wild Assent. I just like it more than your average person does. And number 1 is going to be one that falls into the same category as Too Many Bones, but it deserves its own category almost, or it does, which is Mage Knight from Vladis Vatil from WizKids Games. Mage Knight it's a good game. It's a really good game. It's an incredible game. I have consistently wanted to get rid of this game, but refused to because of how good it is. As far as the reason I want to get rid of it is because it's a burden to learn every single time I pull it out. And again, part of that is a me problem. This is a game I play once a year for the first time. I played this 3 times in the past week for the first time ever, with the hope that maybe playing it 3 times in a week will solidify some of the rules so that the next time I pull it out 7 months from now, I actually hope to be playing it some more, but that's a different conversation. But if I do not play it more in the next 2 weeks, if I do pull it out 7 months from now instead, maybe hopefully locking down 3 plays will lock it in a bit. See, Mage Knight is an incredible RPG adventure. It's absolutely incredible. The problem is, in order for me to teach you the game, I have to teach you some basic concepts and then teach you every single interactive point you'll have as you encounter them, because every single one adds new rules. Here's how you play this game. Let's spend 25 minutes talking about that. Oh, great. We just found some runes. Let me spend 7 minutes cleaning those. We found a castle. Look at that. It's actually called a keep, not a castle. We found the keep. Let me spend another 5 minutes on that. Oh, there's a monastery. Let me spend 7 minutes telling you what the monastery does. What about the village? What about the crystal caverns? What about the mage tower? The cities? Every single thing you discover in the game is a new 7-minute explanation to the players at the table, or to yourself if you're learning the game for the first time. I think Mage Knight is incredible, and I think there will be people on the comments of this video who are like, it's not that bad, Alex, it's a good game, everyone just go play it, it's totally fine, it's very easy. Sure, but there's also a lot of people who feel the same way as I do, and this is a hard game to table. At the end of the day, every time, it's one of those weird things, every time I talk about, getting what's it called, sun drop miniatures, people are like, just sun drop them yourself, it's not a big deal. To you it's not, to the average person, it is. There's always exceptions, but I'll tell you this. I learn a lot of new games every single year. I play a lot of new games. If I sit there and say that this game is above average in terms of its difficulty and complexity, I cannot tell you I'm right, but I can tell you I certainly have the background to feel that this is an exception and reasonably feel that way. Mage Knight is incredible. It is worth it. Everything I just said is worth it. But you have to play this multiple times. You have to table this like 5 times in the first month. That will give you a lot more rules entrenchment so you can lock in a lot of the things. And the game does give you a good custom first scenario so they can kind of give you the basic framework and then teach you things as they go. So the game knows its own problem and does account for it in the way it teaches you the game. So kudos to them for that. That doesn't take away from the homework assignment you have in front of you. It just makes it a lot more absorbable. But when you power through that, it gives you some of the best character building you'll see in a game, some of the best development you'll see from a character, the way you combine your powers, your abilities, the deck building you have, the artifacts, there's artifacts, there's spells, and there's advanced action cards. There's all these things you're having in the game that will just power you up, plus your own innate abilities as you level up from the asymmetric character you're playing as. There's so much incredible stuff going on in Mage Knight. It's absolutely fantastic if you can get past the rules and teach and consistent playing of it. And so that's my list. These are the 10 games, a little bit categories, sometimes games, of games I recommend with a caveat. Things I'd want you to know before I tell you how much I like it and how much you should totally go out and get it. I recommend them, as long as you know those things. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And let me know in the comments down below, what is the game that you always find yourself giving people a caveat over? What's the game you always tell people, you should play this, but this? It's app-driven. It requires 8 players. You never table it. The rules are terrible. What's the game you recommend with a caveat? Let me know down below. And until next time, I hope you have a good one.